This is the Soccer OG. I am Max. I got an email this week from YouTube saying, congratulations, you have 500 subs. Woo! We did it! Well, we can get to 1,000. So please subscribe, tell a friend. As you have noticed, I'm pumping out a lot more shows. You can participate, give me topics you think I should discuss, and they will be discussed here on future Soccer OGs. This is the Sunday edition where I talk about everything, a little longer play, and there was no shortage of news. Certainly as it applies here in the United States. The big news, the U.S. women losing their lawsuit for equal pay. Big one. This, obviously, timing was not ideal when it happened, but it went to a judge, and the judge ruled it out of hand without having to go to court, without going any much further than it did. In hindsight, we should have seen this coming, and I'm going to try and spell this out in the best order I can, but I think it's important to start with this. The U.S. women are the best thing going in American soccer, and it's not even close. We know about the shortcomings of the U.S. men. The U.S. men also on the Olympic level, unable to make that competition in the last two editions. The U.S. soccer out of the developmental game, that happened this week. I mean, the surplus is gone. Carlos Cordero resigning. U.S. soccer is in, as bad as it was for not qualifying for the 2018, it has plummeted even worse, with the exception of the women who breathed such important wind into the sails of U.S. soccer. Back-to-back World Cup titles. And no sign of that slowing down. They have separated themselves from the rest of the world. And I think that gap is still potentially growing. They had a bad contract. And it did them in. And that bad contract led to what you have to call a bad lawsuit. Their legal team probably should have seen this coming, so they have to be held responsible for this as well. The U.S. women did not budge, and I give them a lot of respect for that. They said equal pay, no ifs, ands, or buts, and nothing less. So even when U.S. soccer came to the bargaining table, they're like, nope, equal pay. Could you call that a bit greedy? Possibly. I think in anything you want to be successful, you don't go from here to here. You get some steps and you move it. Those kind of jumps rarely happen. But the U.S. women certainly thought they had a shot. They still think they do. They'll have a bigger seat at the U.S. soccer table moving forward. So the sacrifices of this group of U.S. women could open the door for the next generation. Although I would add, the U.S. women, that most of them on that squad, their lives are incredibly better off financially, and for good reason. They won 2 World Cups. So the sponsorships, all the marketing opportunities, you name it, they will receive them. They're still the bull of the woods. They're going to be the world champions for another 3 years or so. And that I think that could be extended by the next World Cup as well. So they asked for an astronomical amount of money. And that wasn't going to happen. And now they won the court of a public opinion. They didn't win the real court. And that, I think we have to look at that. So all this wave of support from the U.S. women, while we rallied behind it, and political leaders and social leaders and everyone got behind it, the reality is you sign that contract. In a perfect world, you could renegotiate. They should have. They outperformed that contract. There's no doubt about it. But here we are. And when I look at it, I'm glad that we can kind of put some closure to it. Because when you say equal pay, that was the rallying cry. So it's not equal pay with the rest of the women's teams. It's equal pay with the U.S. men, not other men's. U.S. men, U.S. women, loggerheads. And that's torn things apart for a good amount. It's a much different U.S. soccer. Again, the U.S. women, by all means, should get what they deserve. But at what price? This could get caught up again. The legal team for the U.S. women certainly suggested that with the tweet that she had. But with that contract in hand, it's not going to get any further. Something else would have to happen. I also read tweets about the women outperformed the U.S. and then out-earned the U.S. men because the men didn't qualify for the World Cup. What if they had qualified for the World Cup and made a quarterfinal? I read. Would have changed the opinion? I'm like, it's a tough pill to swallow. And the U.S. men are, again, taking their lumps. U.S. soccer taking their lumps, a shell of their former selves. What comes next after this? What if the U.S. women refuse to go to the Olympic Games? What if they protest? The problem with that, the U.S. women's group is so good, the players that replace the first team could probably win the gold medal anyway. So that's a gamble. Someone's going to go to the Olympics. You're not going to turn that down. And we would see the solidarity because, there's some players, the club level players, that kind of got squeezed out of this. The NWSL is sitting there going, wait a minute, who's going to fund us? What's the funding going to look like? So players that play for these clubs and don't play for the national team, they're like, wait a minute. They will absolutely jump at the opportunity to go play at the Olympics. This is for the U.S. women's team. This is not all women's soccer. Perhaps they get into a CBA with the men. Salaries and benefits. I think that would be really interesting. And I think that level playing field, everything there, and you get what you earn each step, the pay to play, where you make the quarterfinals. So keep in mind, there's much more tournaments in place for the U.S. men than are the women. A lot of the women's games are glorified exhibitions, but they do have the World Cup, and they delivered. There's a lot more we can discuss about that, but I try to stay out of the legal bindings that we have here, but they are still pretty interesting. I wish I knew more about it, but there you go. By the way, the men's team is the proverbial tree in the forest. If it fell, no one knows. No one's going to be watching. U.S. soccer, it's going to be bleak. We need a hero. We need some good news. Hopefully that is coming soon. Staying in the United States, the latest big-name European star who says he'd be interested in Major League Soccer is Gareth Bale. He had this quote, "The MLS, it's a league on the rise and continues to grow. Many players want to come to MLS right now. It is definitely something that would interest me. I love going to LA on vacation. I play a lot of golf when I'm there." This is the exact quote every European... it's cut and paste. Cut and paste. This is the exact quote Ronaldo and every player that's come through. Robert Lewandowski. It reminded me of this old SNL skit. Remember The Amazing Alexander? It was John Lovitz, and he was this hypnotist on Broadway. And they would suggest the audience going in there, it's the best show on Broadway. And then they would get the reviews from the audience, and they were clearly being hypnotized. And they would say, we loved it. It was better than Cats. We'll come again and again. So that's what it sounded like to me. I could say, we love MLS. It is a place I want to go. I always visit Los Angeles. I like to play golf. Something pretty promising with regards to Major League Soccer was the news that they can start voluntary individual workouts on May the 6th, detailing a healthy safety protocol, cannot conflict with local public health officials, and that is a state-by-state situation, there's no doubt about it. The good news here, and I think what's great about it for Major League Soccer, is that this happened, the first door opened in MLS as opposed to MLB or NBA. These other sports are talking about things, but haven't really gone through with it. So even though this is a small step, and by the way, if you read it, it is an endless list of logistics and protocol. And it takes away a little of your enthusiasm when you read it, because it realizes how far away we are still from getting back to playing games. But it's a step. And May 6th is here. May 6th is this week. So encouraging news after all that. One step leads to the next. Serendipity. And one day, hopefully, we'll be back. Again, it's going to fall into the state's laps. So certainly teams in New York and California are going to be really challenged, I think, to find a way to practice as a team, to play games. This is a huge week coming up. We're going to find out if we're going to have sports. I know Germany, they pushed it back. It was going to be May 9th. It's not going to be 9th. I think they'll come through. There were they had the expanded testing, and 3 players tested positive for Cologne. And initially, my reaction is, this is your worst fear, that players are infected with COVID-19. But it's a sign that the testing's working. And they're going to get these guys, and they're going to identify them, and then everyone can play on. But they have a big discussion or a big vote coming this week. The Premier League has a massive vote with all 20 clubs coming up on Friday, which direction the league will go. It needs a 14-6 vote to motion through whether they keep playing. And we've already heard that bottom 6 teams who don't want to risk being relegated are all saying, no, we don't want to. I don't know. Again, money talks, and that's going to be a big situation here for the Premier League as we get closer to playing. I think I covered everything again. I'm excited. Another week, I feel we're getting a little bit closer. And again, all eyes on Germany to see that first game. It's going to be monumental. Please subscribe. Don't please, just subscribe. Subscribe because you want to. We'll see you next time.